Well, thanks. And it's the Computer History Museum, and actually JP, who's the last speaker today, is also on the board of the Computer History Museum, but we like to think of it as the Computer Futures Museum as well, because it talks about the future of where technology is going by telling stories. But anyway, as David said, I've been with Accenture a while. I've got the role of Chief Technology Officer. And in that role, I'm responsible for setting the direction, the strategy for where we're going within Accenture, and making sure we're moving our business to where we see technology in the marketplace moving. And this idea around platforms is a very important idea for us and something that we've been working on for a while. So I'll share some thoughts with you on how we see this developing from two perspectives, really. One perspective that I'll share is what we see with our clients and the work we do with our clients in different industries and different parts of the world, and how they're thinking about platforms and how it impacts their business. And then I'll also talk to you about quite a bit about how we're viewing platforms, because we believe in the business we're in. And if you don't know Accenture, we're a global firm of about 340,000 people that focuses on delivering consulting and technology and operations services to our clients and strategy services. And as we look forward, we think platforms are as important to our business and how our industry is going to be disrupted and change as it is to any other industry. So I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing within our own business as well. So we'll hopefully get the day off to a good start with that as well. I noticed in the elevator coming up that all the other floors look pretty dark in here. Did you guys notice that too? I think this is a little bit early for the Media Lab to be awakening, so we're an early group and we'll get the building started. They just left. Yeah. It's a good way to get full use out of the building. We'll use it when they're not. Okay, so the idea of platform again. Why is this important to us and our clients and the business we're in? And the reason is that there's a major shift going on, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir on this topic, but the underlying trend that's driving interest in platforms among us as a business and amongst our clients is the digital revolution that we're in the midst of. And we've been using the phrase for a few years now where we say every business is a digital business. Others say every company is a software company. Mark Andreessen would say every software is eating the world. It's all part of the same idea, which is underlined by the fact that technology is being a key part of every business and a key part of how every business drives their strategy and delivers their products and services. And the reason platform becomes important is as you look at how companies respond to that. So if every company and every organization, from a government social services agency to a consumer products company to a manufacturing company to a transportation company, as they all become technology companies and use technology in the core of their business to change their business and differentiate from their competitors, they need to think very differently about their own business and how they go to market and how their business models are structured. And we think that big change around digital and this transformation around companies being digital will continue to fuel this platform revolution, to refer to the title of Marshall's book here that's in front of you. And I'll talk more about that as I go through the presentation. But the platforms are going to be a key way that companies organize themselves to be competitive and be relevant in the digital world. So really, the way we look at it is the big transformation happening is digital business and the change to digital business across every industry, every organization, every part of the world. And we're in the early stages of that, and looking at how the platforms play out, I think we'll see that platforms play a key role in that change and that transformation. And there's a number of things. You've probably seen some of these same types of statistics. These are a mix from some different organizations. This is from IDC, the market research organization, and they say that as early as 2016, they published this earlier this year, as early as 2016, there'll be 100 new digital industry platforms from non-tech companies. So these are, again, the key word in there is industry platforms, and I'm going to talk a lot about this. So a lot of times we think about technology platforms and horizontal platforms. We believe that the majority of platforms that are going to be successful are going to be deep industry-rich platforms that serve very specialized needs for customers, and I'll talk about why we believe that and what that means. And IDC, sees this as well, as you can see from this statistic. And this is from some research we did, which talks about a key implication that I'm going to highlight today, which is platforms. As this change happens and as companies incorporate platform strategies in their business, what happens in other implications on digital business cause industry boundaries to blur. And this is from a survey we did, and there's been a number of other surveys that reinforce this data point, where executives believe that industry boundaries are going to blur because of what's happening with digital, because of what's enabled by platforms. And what that means is that if industry boundaries blur, one thing that's forcing that I'll talk about is changing behavior and changing demands by customers. And what that's going to require is companies working together very differently in ecosystems. And a company's ecosystem strategy and who their partners are will become a key strategic enabler for them. Much like they think about a supply chain today and think about vertical integration and concepts like that, that's going to change to more of a horizontal concept, and companies thinking about their partnerships and their ecosystem as a key differentiator and a key enabler of how they provide services to customers. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. And this is a similar type of point. 60% of companies plan to engage new digital partners. Same sort of thing that executives are feeling this move happen, where they're structuring their business in different ways and partnering in different ways. And another enabler of this is that needs to be put in place, kind of from an infrastructure perspective, are if you're gonna have partnerships and if you're gonna have an ecosystem that you use to deliver services to customers, you need to connect the technology to that as well. And that's what's fueling this API economy idea. And I know Chet Kapoor from Apogee is on the agenda later, and I think that'll be a very relevant message, because we firmly believe that APIs are a key part of the infrastructure and a key enabler of platforms. And again, you can see here that as we survey executives that we talk to, 71% of them agree, and many are moving toward that type of approach, which is very good for Chet and his business, obviously. But this all is underpinned by an environment of tremendous disruption, and that's another thing I wanted to highlight here. I said earlier that we're at the early stages of the digital revolution that's happening, and there's tremendous angst right now in the executive suite and a lot of uncertainty. And this is a data point that's just a fact. 52% of the Fortune 500 have disappeared since the year 2000. So over half of the Fortune 500 have disappeared since the year 2000. And that pace has been accelerating if you look at it. You can look at Radio Shack, that disappeared a few months ago. AOL got absorbed into Verizon. So companies are either disappearing, going bankrupt, getting absorbed. And that's a pretty striking statistic, 52% in 15 years, whatever it's been. And we believe that pace of disruption is going to increase. And if you look at the reasons behind it, it's lots of reasons that companies disappear, and this happens continually over time. But increasingly, it's again this digital pressure that's causing companies to become irrelevant. It's Amazon changing the game in retail. It's it's Uber changing the game in transportation, and things like that are creating new business models and causing old business models to become obsolete. And this, as I said, causes a lot of angst in the executive suite, and that's what we feel when we talk to executives. There's companies are looking for help like they never have before to really understand these changes and what's happening. And there's a survey we did for the World Economic Forum that we presented in Davos this year. It was research we did with the forum that we presented jointly in Davos. And we did a survey of 2,000 global executives. Of the 2,000 global executives, 87% believed that digital business, these digital pressures, were going to disrupt their company within 5 years, which is a pretty striking number. Almost 9 in 10 believe that digital was going to disrupt their company, threaten their company in a short time, within 5 years. They put a time horizon on it. So that's 9 in 10. Same survey, same executives. Only 7% believe they had a strategy and a roadmap to deal with that. Less than 1 in 10. So 9 in 10 know they're going to be disrupted. Only 1 in 10 know what to do about it. And that's why it's a time when thinking about things like new business models, thinking about things like platforms, helping provide some more clarity to businesses is very important. And that's what we're very focused on in the work we do with our clients. And one way we try to provide that clarity is through our Accenture technology vision. And I didn't adjust this slide based on the conference. It just this is our vision, and you can see platform revolution right in the middle of it. So we think along the same lines as Marshall with his book, which is titled Platform Revolution. So we put this vision out there a while ago, and platforms are at the heart of our digital vision and how we believe companies need to respond to everything that I just talked about. But I thought it'd be worth talking a little bit about some of the other elements of this, because I think it puts into light why we think platforms are important and play the role they do within companies. So let me just hit a few of these other trends real quickly. The first one, the Internet of Me, talks about the fact that there's a lot of focus on Internet of Things, whether it be your smart watch or your fitness bracelet or your thermostat or your connected car, whatever it might be. We believe that a lot of the focus on Internet of Things has been misplaced and has led to a focus on technology and gadgets, and the real focus needs to be on creating better experiences for consumers. And that's why we talk about the Internet of Me. I think it's interesting that consumer accessories, wearable technology, wearable consumer accessories have the highest abandonment rate of any consumer product category. That's because they're gadgets that people don't find sustainable value in. For the generalizing, there's some that are good, but generally people abandon them at a rate of 7 in 10 people abandon those products within 1 year, which is a striking stat. The good news for those companies is a lot more buy them and they cycle through. So the businesses are doing okay, but customers aren't using them sustainably. And that focus on experience is really important, and platforms play a big role in that, as I'll talk about in a minute. The second trend is around outcome economy, and this is really important in the way we think about platforms, at least. We believe that what digital business does is it changes the way customers think, first of all. Customers are thinking more about outcomes and what they want. Customers are thinking about things like, I want to improve the state of my health. I want more leisure time. I want more convenience in how I manage my home, things like that. And the new digital business models, the ones I've talked about, Airbnb, Uber, Amazon, and those sorts of things, are training people to think more in outcomes like that. And we think that's a broad shift that also applies in the B2B world. Our customers, Accenture's customers, increasingly want us to sell what we do in outcomes. They want to buy increased profitability or growth in a certain market almost as a service from us. They don't want to pay for our people. They want to buy an outcome. Delivered on a consumption-based model based on delivery. And we think this idea in the business world and in the consumer world of outcomes is a big shift we're seeing. And I'll give a couple examples of this in a minute. One simple example, though, to give you is Philips, the broad-based consumer goods company. A few years ago, got rid of the broad-based consumer goods, created two businesses, lighting and healthcare. And in healthcare, their focus is squarely on delivering better health outcomes for people around the world. So they'll sell consumer accessories. Yes, they'll sell MRIs. Yes, they'll sell other medical equipment. But they'll also connect that via their Health Suite platform, with the real goal being providing physicians and patients with better information so they can increase the quality of health outcomes for people around the world. That's what we mean by outcome economies. And as I just said, that leads to the platform revolution, because to deliver better outcomes for people or businesses, you need partners, you need an ecosystem, and to provide a connected outcome like that to a customer, you need a platform to do it. And that's why we believe that platforms are really at the crux of strategies and how companies will think about their businesses in the digital world. Now, I'll talk more about platform in a minute, but skipping over to the intelligent enterprise trend you see up there, increasingly, these are more sophisticated services based on more data. Machine learning will be critical capabilities in the platforms, cognitive computing, deep learning, and those sorts of things, so that the platforms incorporate a lot of intelligence, and I'll talk more about this. And then finally, this has a lot of implications on the workforce. I think in the last month, the headline of almost every publication, and at least one headline in every newspaper, has been around workforce implications of this new technology. Atlantic Monthly just ran a big article. It was in the MIT Technology Review that I was reading on the plane on the way up, was focused on workforce implications. It's all over the place. Eric Bernalfson and Andy McAfee and a number of others wrote an open letter on this topic recently. And we believe that there's both upsides and downsides to all this technology, and really needs to be a focus on the workforce and thinking about how the workforce works in different ways, and looking at both the policy and the corporate implications of how we prepare the workforce to work in a new way. And again, a lot of this will be connected around how people interact with technology in a different way to work more effectively, work more safely, more enjoyable work potentially, all connected together. So that's kind of a broad view of how we see platforms fitting in with a big picture of what we talk to clients about. And platforms really become a competitive playing field in our view as you think about this. Every company now is reinvesting in their digital infrastructure, and that's a big challenge for a lot of companies right now, because companies are dealing with big technology estates that they operate, legacy technology and the like. And they know that they need to reinvest in those technologies to create new experiences for customers. There's a big reinvestment wave happening. I think companies have a grasp on that. They know that they need to create the e-commerce capabilities for their clients. They know that they need to create the mobile experiences for their customers, et cetera. So the reinvestment's happening, but the reinventing isn't happening enough, and that's why this platform discussion that we're having today is really important in getting this out, and getting these ideas better formed so businesses can act on them is really critical, we believe, and why I'm really happy to be here talking to you today, because I think the collective discussion that we're all having is really essential to the competitiveness of companies and to where businesses need to take their businesses and their strategies going forward. So I'll talk about these a little bit more. But a couple examples, you may have seen some of these. We've been talking about some of these for a while. John Deere, I think, is a great example from a platform perspective. How many of you know the story and what John Deere has done? Okay, a number of you do. So the story on John Deere is they sell tractors, right? It's a business. You sell a tractor. It's a capital purchase for a person or a company, and the people use the tractors. They buy maintenance and service and such. So that's been their business for a long time. Well, they're starting to think about their business differently, and they're starting to think about the tractor as a platform. So if you think about the tractor as a platform, if you think about the tractor as a product, the business starts looking challenging. You have low-cost competitors coming in from all sorts of different places, different countries. You have a lot of competitive threats to the business. But if you think about the tractor as a platform, it gets pretty interesting, because if the tractor is a platform, then you can sell a farm tractor with platform capability. So you tie in meteorological information. You tie in soil quality data that you get through information sensors and satellite survey data and such that you get through the soil. You tie in growing information. You tie in information on what they plant in the fields and such. And what John Deere then ends up enabling through the tractor as a platform is an ability to then sell a new product, which is increased productivity to farmers, delivered through a connected platform of a tractor. And that's a better business model and a more differentiated way to go to market than selling a green tractor. And that's what they're focused on as they think about different options for their business. Home Depot, I think, is another interesting example where they're looking at changes to their business in a number of ways. This is one example through their mobile app, but Home Depot is also looking at new things like what Home Depot's been known for. All of you shop at Home Depot, right? Everybody a Home Depot customer? So you go in, and why do you go there? Wide array of goods delivered at a low price because they've got a very effective supply chain and they've got a wide array of goods. That's been their business model: cost-effective supply chain sourcing delivered cheaply at convenience to customers. They're thinking about the fact that, well, that's threatened by Amazon and many others that are coming at the business. A better business model might be connected experiences delivered through Home Depot for customers. We're looking at programs like standardizing their suppliers, using their supplier network and leverage, creating an ecosystem, connecting people around standards like Wink for home automation, so that if you buy a lighting device and if you buy some other device for your home, if it comes from Home Depot, you'll know that you're buying a connected experience, and Home Depot's enabling a connected experience for you as a customer. And that's a very different way of thinking about the business and creating a proposition for the business. Then as we think about our business, as I said, we think about it in two ways. We think about Accenture's business we think about platforms as it applies to Accenture's business, and we also think about platforms as we work with our clients to help them develop platforms to support their businesses. So I'll talk about both a little bit. But as I said, we believe that this is something that's really going to impact the technology industry itself in a potentially a big way. If you think about the model we've had for software and software companies for many years, if you think about platforms and where this is headed, you can start envisioning a future where software companies are actually threatened and maybe a lot less relevant in a platform world. And the software business model becomes very, very challenged compared to a platform business model. I'll talk about that a little bit. So when we think about platforms, we think a few things are important, and this is the way we think about them. We think about kind of a building block approach to platforms. Underlying it is the foundational platforms of, if you're going to build a platform, build it on a cloud, build it on the key components that are going to enable you to be successful. If you're building a platform Amadeus, a travel platform or something back in the 90s, you had to build everything. You had to build the foundation yourself. These days, you don't have to build the foundation. You can leverage the foundation. You can get it in a cost-effective, ubiquitous, universal manner. So getting a solid foundation and a foundation that allows you to connect to the ecosystem is critical, and that includes the APIs and things that I talked about. So we think about this foundational layer first. And then a key part of it that we think about next is this industry-rich idea in platforms. We think there will be some horizontal platforms that'll provide value generally across a lot of industries, but we believe that that there's a lot more opportunity for industry-specialized and industry-rich platforms, and I'll show an example of that in a minute. This idea of being industry-rich is very important to think about because it affects the architecture, it affects how the business model and how you plan these things. Just as an example, in two closely related areas, think about pipelines and electricity distribution. Sounds like very closely related things, but when you think about a platform that you might do, we're just in the way we view it, we're creating platforms in those two spaces in very different ways. We're partnering with GE, their Predix platform, on a platform-based offering for connected pipelines. It's called the Intelligent Pipeline offering. We're partnering with GE that we're delivering to pipelines to improve pipeline efficiency and management. That's very different than what we're doing in the electricity distribution area. Partnered with Siemens, created a joint venture called Omnetric. It's a very different kind of platform, to connect, to provide, connect electricity, smart grid, and the enhanced services that utility companies are looking for on top of those platforms. So even in closely related sectors, there's very different platforms. A lot of common components that you need in those platforms, but you have to think about the industry differentiation very carefully. The second then is future-proofing, and this is an important point because I think a number of companies that we've worked with have thought of platforms as a one-off thing. I'll build the platform, I'll get in the market, and then I'll move on to something else. And that won't work. The platforms need to be a sustained part of the business, continued investment, and a commercial model and a business model in and of itself, or it'll wither and die away, particularly given the innovation cycles that we're going to see as they adopt. So future-proofing and looking at not just an investment model, but a real full commercial model is going to be very important. We think of it as needing to be delivered in an as-a-service model. Companies don't want to think about big capital investments to buy into a platform and then amortize that over or depreciate it over a number of years. They want to buy as they use it, and many companies need to participate in multiple platforms. They're going to need easy on-ramps and low-cost demand or consumption-based as a service-based mechanisms to get in and out. And so we think that it has to be delivered as a service. And finally, something that Marshall talks a lot more eloquently about than me is the idea of the two-sided networks, which we believe is important. The most effective platforms really create this two-sided network effect, which creates a virtuous circle of success by bringing in the kind of demand side and supply side, so to speak, on the two sides of the platform. And where you can create that two-sided network, then you can create a different set of dynamics for the platform. So a couple examples, in our business, one thing we've done is we've been investing for about 4 years in something called the Accenture Cloud Platform, and we believe that over time it's possible that with owning, we don't own any data centers, we don't own any infrastructure, no servers. We believe it's possible with our scale we could become the largest enterprise cloud company owning no infrastructure by creating a cloud platform. Because what we see is our customers are confused by the variety of cloud options that they have. They can buy from Amazon, they can buy from Azure, they can buy from AT&T, they can buy from BT, they can buy from Rackspace, all in a different way. All have to be managed, ordered, integrated in a very different way. So we saw that and said, well, it'd be interesting to try to create a two-sided platform here, connect all those pieces up and integrate them and orchestrate them more effectively, provide that to customers and see what happens. And turns out that works pretty well, and we've been at that for about 4 years and learning a lot as we go, and it's growing very rapidly. It's a very fast-growing part of our business, and again, it's playing that role. It's kind of like Airbnb. They own no rooms, we own no servers, but we're providing a tremendous amount of cloud capacity to our customers, and we believe that that's really a good example of how you can create these platform effects. An example of this that we did is actually with BT. They're one of the customers of our Accenture Cloud Platform. Their mobile sports offering, BT Sports Zone, runs through the cloud platform and allows them to source cloud capability from different sources to support the peaks and peaks and valleys in demand that they see through their offering. So that's the kind of thing we can do there. Now let me tell you another example here. This is how we're viewing the Internet of Things. I said I didn't like the term, but I'll use it anyway. The Internet of Things world, broadly speaking, we're looking at something we call the Connected Platform as a Service platform, to support this market generally. But as I said, we don't think there can be one. When you look at Internet of Things across industries and connected platforms, it can't be one thing. So what we're doing is looking at this by industry and by different use case. So city on one side, all the way through all these different industry sectors. And then when you look at them, they all look quite a bit different. And you break those down into even within individual industries, you see very different use cases. And those dots of color coding you see in there are different technologies that we believe are important in those cases. So you can see a lot of commonalities, but also a lot of differences industry by industry in terms of the types of technologies and the specific vendors that we think are important in these different use cases. And we've expanded this out to about 140 different industry use cases, and we think that's going to grow even further. And we think that's the level at which platforms will be successful. So rather than thinking about just a city or just a communications company or consumer goods company, you need to really drill it down further when you look at the business model and how these things work. And this is the way we're viewing it. In some cases, we're building these platforms on our own. In most cases, we're working with clients that want to become platform providers in these industries and using the Connected Platform as a Service architecture we've built to enable the service for them. One that we just threw the slide in there because we just announced it today. We had a press release that came out today announcing the Accenture Insights platform, which is another example of a platform. This is one that's it's insights delivered as a service on a platform where you can, somebody that wants to run a certain set of analytics and get a certain set of insights can spin up a platform in the cloud in a matter of minutes, look at a wide variety of data, information, analytics that's available, and then customize that and develop new insights, new analytics specific to their business model. And that ability to spin things up quickly, integrate multiple data sources, add new data in, and then spin up new insights, we think is another great example and a great use case for a platform type of business model. So all this comes around then, if you think about those examples, and what I talked about is this point around ecosystems being really important in the way you think about platforms. And for us, I talked about the examples. Our cloud platform is an example. We have many partners in delivering that in addition to many customers. And that we don't view them as suppliers, they're partners in terms of how we deliver services. Philips, in the example I gave, or John Deere in the tractor example, many partners in new ways that are part of delivering a single outcome to their customers. And that companies thinking differently about those partnerships is really important to be successful at the platforms. I was with the top strategy team of a Fortune 50 company recently who believes this and is investing in platforms and this type of approach. And the discussion they were having is they were going to blow up and revamp their supply chain organization because they realized the current way they deal with suppliers wouldn't work in the new world. They need to think of them as partners. They need to figure out which ones were kind of first-tier partners in delivering service in a different way to customers. So they were looking at changing the organization, changing the governance, changing the leadership, changing the whole approach around what they currently called the supply chain management organization to think about it very differently to be successful in the world of ecosystems. And that's the kind of thinking we think is important. So I'll wrap up on five, what I've called 5 platform dichotomies, maybe just, if this is useful, just to give you some thoughts on things that I think are challenges, for us to think about as a group that's working together to think about platforms, and challenges for our clients as they think about their platform strategies. The first one is whether, if you're thinking about this from a company perspective, are you going to compete or partner? So if you're GE's, with their Predix platform, they've clearly chosen the view where they want to set the tone. They want to compete to be the leader. In any of these given sectors, I would submit that there's going to be a limited number of winners, in most cases just a handful. And GE's approach obviously is they want to be one of the winners, and they're investing at scale to do that, and you all know, I'm sure, well what they're doing. Not everybody's got the capital to do that. Not everybody could win even if they wanted to do that. So a key decision for companies is going to be, do you want to be the platform? Do you want to create that business? Do you want to think about how that business model would work as companies like GE, Philips, Siemens, and others are doing? Or do you want to partner and think about how you adjust your business model, just be part of the platforms? One's not better than the other, but they're very different. And I think a lot of companies now are confused about which they want to be in, and I think getting clarity and distinction around that's very important. The second is proprietary versus open. I think most people that go down this path start off thinking proprietary. They want to create differentiated advantage for themselves. They want to create a platform that's different. They want to create something special. I think I'm not necessarily talking about open source in this, but the idea of being open APIs, open participation, probably in a lot of cases powered by a lot of open source, is another way to go. And you've seen the shift, not to talk too much about GE, but you've seen a shift even in GE in this case, where they've taken Predix and open sourced it and tried to create more of an open model as they've gone. And I think that decision for the platform builders of are they going to go proprietary and try to create competitive advantage and lock others out, or are they going to create open platforms, is a very important one to think through. If you look at the automotive sector as an example, I'd argue that most of the companies are going down more of a proprietary type of path right now, and the question will be, as you look at where the automotive industry heads, is that going to be the right approach? Then the third one, and this is a really important one. I don't know how this one is going to play out, but is this dichotomy between private and shared. And if you think about a platform where multiple companies are participating, so if I'm using a Siemens platform and as a customer for connecting industrial equipment together, there's multiple companies participating on that platform providing service. Is the data open to all? Do I, as a customer, get all the data from the suppliers? Does a small supplier providing a niche part of the service on that company's, on whoever's platform it is, get access to all the data? Does the company that owns the platform get access to all the data? And how's that going to play out? And that's going to be, I believe, a tremendous impediment to platform take-up, because companies are going to be concerned about ownership, data advantage, data differentiation, et cetera, and getting delineation right around ownership in this private versus shared and what can be accessed is important. The way I've started to think about this in some of our own work is you need kind of open swim lanes and private swim lanes on the platforms, and you need a way to get people comfortable, from everything from regulators to government officials to competitors, comfortable with the degree of private swim lanes versus public swim lanes that you offer. But that's an area that really hasn't been explored enough to date, in my view, in the platforms that exist. Invest versus leverage, that's, I guess, the other side of the compete versus partner point. But if you're going to, there's a financial aspect of competing versus partnering, which is, do you have the wherewithal and the resources to invest to create the platforms at scale? As I said, it's not a one-time investment decision. Platforms are about entering a business, and you have to make the decision of whether you've got the investment capacity and wherewithal, and then commercial model over time to make that work. And then the final one is this idea of product service versus outcome, and this is one I strongly believe that the nature of what customers are buying, both business customers and consumers, is changing, and thinking robustly about what you want to offer to your customer. Do you want to still sell tractors? That might be fine. Or do you want to sell the outcomes to the customers? And getting very clear on that and understanding if you're moving into this world, if you don't shift the nature of what you're providing and think about the outcomes, then as a company you may be losing a step. So that's what I had to share with you today. Hopefully that was somewhat useful to wake up the building and get things started. I'm not sure if my Apple Watch isn't waking up. There we go. Do we have a few minutes for questions, or you want to move on to the next?
No, we've got time.
Okay,
please.
So.
Hi, David Rogers, Columbia Business School. Thanks, Paul. That was terrific. Great, I think, orientation for the day. Great cases, in which I'll dig in more. Two questions. One, just a small point, because you showed a statistic which I almost included in my current book, but I dug into it, and I think it's frequently misquoted, which is about the Fortune 500. It's not actually that 40% or more have disappeared, as in the company is not around.
Right.
They've actually fallen out of the Fortune 500. So it's a much less cataclysmic fact than it sounds like. But I see that very frequently cited because of an original misattribution in the book. I love the focus on industries versus use cases. And I think you sort of clarified my initial question, but if the industry is sort of too broad, as you said, for example, the connected home, and then you had these different use cases, too broad to create a single platform for, how do you sort of define, how do you find the right use case for a platform? And maybe this is the point of the difference from investing versus sort of continuing to evolve. Don't the use cases change over time? The definition, as you said, as the industries themselves are more fluid and the boundaries are changing, how do you sort of know once you've defined an initial platform around a given use case, whether it's the farmer and the tractor or Home Depot and the do-it-yourself homemaker or something, or a home builder, how do you know where that use case is changing and therefore how you're going to need to redefine the structure of the platform you're building?
Yeah, no, first of all, on your first point, yeah, I take your point. It is companies dropping out as well as dropping, as well as disappearing. In terms of the second question on the use cases, it's a good question. I think there's more art than science into understanding how you construct the platform and where you focus it and what's going to be the right scope of a platform and the way to deliver it. So the best way I guess I'd say it is I think it's an area where you need a really agile strategy approach as you get into these things, and in some cases learning as you go. And we've had that experience as we've gone down this path. We've kind of learned a bit as we go. And our Accenture Cloud platform is an example. We've morphed and changed and pivoted many times as we've moved along that. We started, for example, we started at an application level, thinking application level sourcing is what companies wanted. We pivoted down to infrastructure. We're moving back up, because the market is, the market's been moving a little bit. So I think there's, just like any other new businesses new ventures that companies start, I think a lot of them are going to fail and probably be, they're going to find they were directed in the wrong place. I think the way I'd address that is saying you need to, be willing to fail fast if you go in the wrong direction and be willing to adapt and tune it as you go. But I think there's some broad sectors that you can say there's going to be something here on a sustainable basis. So automotive, telematics, infotainment in the vehicle, there's going to be a need for that. You might argue who's going to win and what the right way is to build the platform, but there's going to be a business there, I believe, in providing those services. Connected home is a trickier one for me because connected home means so many different things that I'm not sure how that plays out and who has the right ability to play that. But connected buildings, I think you can sort out, which is different because there's on the commercial building level, then there are things I think you can view today and view as businesses. So I think it's different by use case, and the best thing is I think you got to be smart and flexible about it, which isn't a very good answer, but that's yeah. Okay.
Great. Thanks very much. My name is Peter Evans. I'm the Vice President for the Center for Global Enterprise. I lead a project on the rise of the platform economy. So right. What you talked about was right up the alley. One of the questions I had is around competition for software engineers to deliver sort of the applications that you're talking about for, and the dichotomy between commercial and industrial. Right now, there's more than 100 app stores, and there's this mad rush to build app stores, to build these applications that attract software engineers to deliver and build out those applications. Lots of opportunities for software developers to join big platforms like Apple's and get access to lots of customers. I don't see that in the industrial space. And so my question is do the industrial players, in order to attract high talent and maybe even deep domain expertise in aircraft engines or power plants, to attract them, they're maybe going to have to give up more margin or create more incentives for those platform software developers to join their ecosystem. And so my question is around margins and whether or not, can GE really make a ton of money in Predix, or are they going to have to give a ton away to attract software developers to join their ecosystem? Thanks.
A really, really good question, and I'll answer part of it. We've got one of my colleagues, John Elliott, who's sitting right there, who maybe separately later in the day he's focused a lot in that area and can talk to you a lot more about what we're doing there. But there's a lot mixed into that question. Yeah, so your first point was tough to attract talent. Definitely the case. There's both a shortage of talent, generally in these areas, and it's pricey talent and everything else. So that's very much of a challenge. Absolutely right. We view it as two different types of ecosystems. There's the IT types of ecosystems. First of all, that we're familiar with. It's creating an ecosystem around iOS or creating an ecosystem around AWS or things like that. I think those types of organizations are very good at building ecosystems, developer ecosystems. The OT world, operational technology is very different. And we see a big dichotomy. Probably should add it to my dichotomy page between IT and OT. And we're spending a lot of time looking at how those come together, because historically, operational technology has been different operating systems, different languages, different everything in a separate world, often different, in most companies, different teams. It's typically not part of IT. The OT is often their manufacturing, engineering, or R&D organization. And that's a big challenge because this is forcing those areas together. And what we're seeing we have a whole area of work going on in IT/OT integration to look at coming together. Now, one of the changes two changes, I guess, that are positive are that more of the OT is happening on commercially standard platforms, Linux and things like that, which is helping because in the past that wasn't the case. They're more proprietary. And as that's the case, then it's easier for developers, it's a little closer move to get the developers over. That's one thing. The other is that the standards organizations are trying to do that. The problem is there's some competing standards out there right now. There's the All-Scene Alliance, there's Industrial Internet Consortium, and a variety of others that I'm sure you're aware of. And and I think that's one of the things some of those standards bodies are focused on is that issue of getting standardized enough so that they can attract more developers in. So I think it's going to take that kind of focus again with an ecosystem rather than one company being able to to create that ecosystem, because you don't have anybody with the power of an Apple or a Amazon to drive a developer ecosystem in any of these spaces yet. So, okay, great, thank you.